Hi friends, welcome back. It's the Diet Diaries, as you know. I'm going to get right into it today. I'm hoping this will maybe be a little bit of a shorter episode. Last couple of weeks, I think have been a little longer. And it's so funny because I was speaking in a group last night, a quarterly, so was that 3 months? I do a workshop or a Q&A session inside of a women's running group, an ultra running group actually, which might come as a really big surprise to you. I'm not speaking about ultra running specifically. Obviously, that's not my wheelhouse. But these are women like you and me, and they do ultra running for a hobby and something that they love, but they have a lot of all the same struggles that you and I have around food and body image, which might come as a surprise to you. I think a lot of people would think that someone who does that type of exercise, if you can even call it that, or that type of training, wouldn't have these quote unquote issues. And it couldn't be further from the truth. So anyway, I was doing it last night. These women live all over the country, and the group is run by a friend of mine that I met in a business coaching group years and years ago, like pre-COVID. She lives in New Hampshire. Anyway, someone was asking me a question if I had a podcast episode about something. I'm like, yes, I do have a podcast episode about that. I'm like, I think it's from like a year and a half ago. Well, I went to find that episode this morning, and it was from almost 3 years ago. I'm like, holy shit, I can't believe that was almost 3 years ago. Because now that we're like really like into 2026, right? It's almost March. It's like things that happened in 2023 are like now kind of like 3-ish years ago, depending when on 2023. So the reason I'm sharing all this is because what I'm going to talk about today, I know I have talked about on the podcast before. I couldn't tell you the podcast episode. I'm really not good at indexing them like that. They're all on my website. They're all on Apple and Spotify. But if I have to be like, oh, I'm looking for this specific podcast episode, I just have to kind of start scrolling and looking for things. And sometimes the titles don't always jog my memory. Not to mention that we need to hear things so many fucking times before they sink in. And the reason I'm talking about this today is this came up in this group last night, right? So the number one thing this group of women had asked me to come talk about was around creating a way of eating versus following a way of eating, right? How do I know what is right for me? How do I know what to do? And I'm like, I love this topic. This is my wheelhouse. I love that this is what everyone wanted to get support with last night. And we kind of went through a whole kind of like reflection and self-auditing process, which was really fun. And I'm actually trying to think about like, could I turn that into something like for everyone to do? I don't know. Maybe like a live workshop, maybe? I don't know. But there were 2 skills that we ended up talking about. And the way that these 2 skills resonated with this group of women was unbelievable. They were like, oh my God, I've never heard anyone talk about food like this before. I want to share all of my friends. This is amazing. This is making me think about food in a totally different way. And to be honest, like I've never seen or heard any other coaches or nutritionists talk about food in this way, using these skills. And maybe this sounds obnoxious, but like that's why I'm really fucking good at what I do, because I am giving you tools and skills and ways to think about food that you have never thought about food before. That strip away the how many calories did I eat, how many points did I have, how many macros did I have, how much protein did I have, did I hit my numbers today, right? Was I good or was I bad? And starts to give you ways to think about food much more in the context of what's happening in your own body. What is working for you? What is not working for you? Do you even know what's working for you and what's not working for you, right? We are so influenced and so consumed by what other people are doing and what we think we should be doing based on what other people are doing. And those other people could be TikTok, it could be your best friend, it could be your doctor, it could be a whole range of people, and what has worked for them and what hasn't, and what the latest trend is, and all of this, and what's going to get you results that most people, especially women who come to me when we start working together in one-on-one coaching, really don't have a sense of what they need to be doing. They only know how to follow a plan that was given to them or that they've copied off of something else. And I completely understand that, right? Because who wouldn't want to replicate something that worked for someone else or that someone told them to do? In so many ways, it feels so much easier than trying to figure it out for yourself. And also, if it's coming from someone that you trust, even if it's like an influencer that you trust, right? Like this whole economy and industry of influencers and creators exists for a reason, right? Because we have learned to trust these people and we believe their recommendations. And so if a creator that you follow has done this diet or bought this supplement or done this thing and it has worked for them, why wouldn't you want to try it, right? I completely understand that. But here's the thing, right? Like, just because it worked for someone else doesn't mean it's going to work for you. I know it might feel obnoxious for me to say that, but that's kind of like the unfortunate, it's not unfortunate, inconvenient truth of being a human, is that we all live such unique lives. And yes, are there, of course, baseline things that we all need to be doing? 1,000%. This isn't to say that some people need to sleep 8 hours and some people only need to sleep 2. No. Just like some people need to eat 200 grams of protein and some people only need to eat 40. No, right? Like, there are guidelines that matter. But within those guidelines, there's a lot of flexibility. And how we meet those guidelines, there's a tremendous amount of flexibility and variety. And that's where we really get caught up in trying to shove a square peg into a round hole. And so the 2 skills I'm going to talk about today are really a way for you to check in and start to notice and pay attention to what you are doing in terms of what, why, and how you are eating. And not only just to evaluate that on what you're currently doing, but to help you create a way of eating that helps you move towards your goals, that is in alignment with your values, that works for your life, your preferences, your schedule, your family, your financial situation, your resources, your time, energy, and attention, right? All of those things I just listed are variables that impact you, and they are why you can't just like lift something up that you see someone else doing or that someone tells you to do and just expect to drop it into your life and for you to be able to execute it in the same way and for you to get the same results as someone else. Can it happen? Yeah, I mean, of course it can happen. Does it happen? Very, very rarely. So let's get into it. The first one is something, guys, I have been talking about. I've been coaching for 5 years. And as many of you know, or may not, because there's, I think, a lot of new people listening to the podcast. I taught yoga for 9 years before that. And before that, I worked for advertising in 10 years, right? So I have been working in the health and wellness space now for 14 years, which is crazy. And it fits because Ben is going to be 14 and I did my yoga teacher training in that first year that he was alive. It's been a long time. It's been way more time than I worked in advertising. So I've worked with a lot of women over these 14 years. And this skill, I developed this skill in my first year of coaching. And the little acronym abbreviation, it's not even an acronym, the little abbreviation is NSS. And here's what NSS stands for: nourishing, satisfying, satiating. Sometimes the language feels a little clunky, but I have yet to come up with better language for it. So that's what we're going to go with. And I used to talk about this, honestly, all the time. And then I kind of went through a phase where I was talking about it, but a little bit more, I think, abstractly and not in terms of this very specific concept and check-in. And what I want you to visualize, and I am going to find a way in the show notes of this episode to post the infographic that goes with this, because the visualization of this is super important and just helpful. I want you to picture a Venn diagram, right, where you have 3 circles and those 3 circles overlap in the center. One circle is the nourishing, the N. One circle is satiating, the S. And another circle is the other S, satisfying. And this is how you want to start thinking about food. This is the lens through which you want to evaluate what, why, and how you are eating, right? Let's walk through it. Nourishing is really getting to like the nutrition of your food, right? Does this meal, it's not just the food, right? It's the meal. It's the way I'm looking at my food kind of as a whole. Does it have the nutrition I need, right? Am I getting some protein? Am I eating fruits and vegetables? Am I eating fiber? Am I getting in carbs? Am I getting in fat, including some what we'll call like healthy, more nutritious fats, meaning the unsaturated fats, right? Am I getting that stuff, right? Am I nourishing my body with the nutrients, the food that my body needs to feel good, to run, to operate? Okay, that's one of the circles. Then the reason it's a Venn diagram is because the other 2 pieces, satisfying and satiating, are equally as important. And we tend to think about the food, meaning like, well, how healthy is this food and how clean is this food and how nutritious is this food? We tend to think about that as being the most important thing, and it is not. It is very important, but it is equally as important as, is this food filling, meaning that's satiating, And is this food satisfying? Meaning, do I enjoy it? Because if you are missing any one of those pieces, what you are doing is not going to work for you and it's not going to be sustainable. So the satisfying piece is very simple. Am I enjoying this? Do I like what I'm eating? When I have finished this meal, am I like, wow, that was really good. It doesn't always have to be the best meal of your life, but if you spend the majority of your time eating food, you're like, yeah, this is okay. Like I'm choking down this brown rice and grilled chicken and steamed broccoli, or like this plain oatmeal without any brown sugar or toppings, or a fat-free, sugar-free yogurt, or all the things that we eat because we're told that they're healthy and nutritious, but we give up the enjoyment. That is not going to be something you can do for the rest of your life. And you already know that, because that's why you very often end up overdoing it on something else and constantly having to get back on the wagon. So you need to be enjoying what you're eating. And the third circle, and they're not in any particular order, satiating, you need to feel full after you eat. This is very important. This is maybe the most underrated, overlooked of the three. If you do not feel full after you eat, you are going to start jacking up your food noise because you're constantly going to be thinking about food. You're going to be constantly looking for snacks, which is then in turn going to have you eat more food and bump up your overall caloric intake beyond what it would be if you were eating more filling meals. And then what happens is you never really start to differentiate between true hunger and true fullness, because you always have this low level of hunger that you basically live with. And I hear this from women all the time. One of the women last night was saying this. She's like, no matter what I eat, I'm always hungry. If I have a salad, if I have a piece of fruit, whatever I eat, I'm always hungry, right? I have had countless clients come to me and talk about this and say, I feel like I can never get enough food. And yes, are there some people who just have bigger appetites? 1,000%, yes, there are. A lot of those people are not eating in a way that is going to respond to that appetite. Protein absolutely plays a big role in this, right? So does fiber, right? Protein and fiber are filling. But guess what? So does fat. Fat plays a huge role in satiety, right? So if you're really focused on protein and fiber and you're still have the brainwash from the 90s where fat is bad and you don't want to eat a lot of fat, that's going to play a role in your satiety. You're not going to feel full. And that's going to end up causing you to eat more, right? If you don't feel full after meals, you will end up eating more overall. And sometimes feeling full feels scary for people because it makes them feel like I've eaten too much. But there is a range of fullness. You do not need to feel Thanksgiving full. You don't want to feel Thanksgiving full. And I'm using that as kind of like a benchmark where we feel overstuffed. And that's not even something maybe you ever want to do even on Thanksgiving. But I'm just kind of using it as like a colloquial reference you'll understand. Part of the work is exploring the range of fullness that exists for you. Like I know when I finish a meal, and sometimes we do need to give it a little bit of time. 15, 20 minutes is a long time. Usually within like a few minutes, you'll start to get a sense of like, okay, I've had enough. No, I need a little bit more food. And I know some days where I'm just more hungry. I'm like, I know I need to eat more food. And then I have that extra food. I'm like, boom, there it is. A big part of this is about getting back in touch with those feelings and being able to recognize them within your own body instead of relying on how many grams of protein you had or how many points you ate or Weight Watchers points or how many calories or how many macros you had to tell you when you're done. Or a preset meal plan that says, oh, this is what you're going to have in your meal. You're going to have 5 ounces of this and 6 ounces of that and a giant cup of this, and relying on, oh, I finished that meal. Well, I should be full. No, you are full when you feel it inside of your own body, not when a number tells you, not when you've eaten a certain amount of food on your plate. And so this check-in, this NSS, nourishing, satisfying, satiating check-in becomes a way for you to start reflecting on that and thinking about it and starting to slowly shift your reliance from something external, meaning a meal plan that you're following or what a nutritionist told you to eat or a list of foods or again, grams or calories or whatever of whatever you're eating, to what do you feel inside of your own body? That is a skill that we are innately born with that gets stripped away from us very early, and we have to relearn it. And this tool is a huge way to relearn that. One of the women last night, I kid you not, on this call, I took a picture, I screenshotted it because I was like, this is amazing. I need to save this. I have to scroll through all my snow photos. Where is it? She said, I really appreciate the NSS framework. Goals of eating and food should include satisfaction and satiety, not just nutrition. I think I'm going to tell all my friends about this. Please do. Please tell everyone you know. Nobody else out there is talking about this. And so I wanted to, again, I've talked about this in the past, but it's been a while. This is a transformational skill. And you use it as a skill because you start to check in, you start to reflect back after you've had a meal, reflect back. Through NSS, was this nourishing, satisfying, satiating? What was missing? What did I do well on? What didn't I do well on? What do I need to pay attention to for next time? When I'm planning a meal, right? If you are a meal planner, if you're planning out your meals to cook for the week, if you're going to a restaurant, whatever it is, if you before you eat, use that as a filter to check in. Is this meal going to be nourishing, satisfying, satiating? And you might not know those answers right until you're eating it, right? Does it have the nutrition I want it to have? Is it going to be enjoyable? And is it going to be filling? Now, I also want to caveat this, that not every single thing you eat always is going to check all three boxes, right? If you're having dessert, it's not going to be nourishing, right? It's just going to taste good. So yes, of course, there are times and circumstances where this is not always going to be the filter. But for meals and for, I would say, 85 to 90% of your eating, this is the filter that you want to be using. And this works in conjunction with the second skill I wanted to talk about, which is something, I don't know that I can call it proprietary to me, but this is something that I created while I was coaching. I did not learn this from anyone. No one taught this to me. And I have never seen anyone else talk about it. I have shared it with many, many people. And now that I wasn't talking about this, I'm like, wow, maybe I should do some kind of trademark thing on this. I have shared this with obviously every client that I work with, and other coaches who have shared it then with their people, right? I was like my friend Megan last night, who runs this running coaching group. One of the women's like, oh, Megan has talked about this on her podcast, right? Because I had talked about it with Megan. And it is this concept of the jobs of foods, that all foods have a job, and that a lot of the issues that we think we have around food, around feeling out of control, not having willpower, not having self-control, aren't those things at all, but are actually us not putting the right food into the right job. And there's, other behavioral skills that need to come along with that, but that sort of in some ways becomes the baseline. And this skill is also really, really helpful for starting to strip away a lot of the emotional baggage and the morality that we assign to these foods. Because all the foods that we feel out of control around, that we have no willpower around, that we can't have in the house, it's not grilled chicken and broccoli. It's not a bag of salad, right? It's not an apple. It's chips, cake, cookies, ice cream, pizza, bread, pasta, all that kind of stuff. The snacky stuff that's easy to overeat. So here's what I mean by the concept of jobs of foods, is that every food has a job and you have to put it into its assigned job. So here's an example, and then I'm going to give you an analogy, which is going to make the whole thing click. Potato chips have very little nutrition in them, right? They're a carb. They are not a filling carb, right? They have no fiber in them. So that means that the job of potato chips is just to taste good. It's just to be salty and crunchy and snacky. It's not to fill hunger. It's not to give you nutrition, right? Pretty much, if you go back to NSS, it's just to be satisfying, right? The only job of chips is to be satisfying, which means if you're going to make chips part of a meal, where's your nourishment coming from? Where's your satiety coming from, right? Those chips need to be with something. But if you are hungry, if you're you're hungry, let's say, and you're working from home and you've got back-to-back meetings and you've got no time to eat lunch that day. And so you run down into the kitchen, you're like, I've got to grab something. I'm going to grab these chips. And you grab the chips and you blow through the bag. Let's say it's like a snack bag size. And you're like, I'm so hungry. And so you grab another bag. And then you get off your meeting and you're like, shit, I've got another meeting in half an hour. I'm just going to grab another bag of chips. And before you know it, over the course of 2 hours, you've eaten 3 or 4 bags of chips, right? And some of you can probably relate exactly to this. And some of you can kind of extrapolate this into your own life and be like, oh yeah, I kind of did something similar with this food. And then the story you tell yourself is, see, I'm out of control around chips. I cannot have chips in the house. Every time they're in the house, this is what I do. I can't stop eating them. I have no control. Well, guess what? That's not what's happening. What's happening is you're asking chips to do a job that they just can't do. If you're hungry, chips cannot fill that hunger. I will caveat it by saying they can fill that hunger if you eat a shit ton of them, which does not feel good in any way and is going to be completely out of alignment with your values and how you want to take care of yourself. So here's the analogy that I'm going to make. If you hire a chemistry teacher to teach a history class, it's not going to go very well. It could be the best fucking chemistry teacher that knows chemistry inside and out. The smartest teacher, the kindest teacher, the most supportive teacher. But you put them in there to teach U.S. history and they're like, I don't know, American Revolution, what? It's not because they're a bad teacher. It's because they don't know how to teach history. They don't know history. You're just putting them in the wrong job. It's not a problem with that person or their skill set as a teacher or their compassion for students. It's that you're asking them to do a job that they were never taught how to do. Food is literally the same thing. If you ask a food to do a job that is not designed to do, things are not going to end well. And we can do this on the flip side, right? This is not just about taking, non-nutritious, AKA what we like to call junk food, and asking them to fill hunger. This works in the reverse. So what I mean by that is, let's say you really want dessert, okay? You really are in the mood for dessert, but you say to yourself, no, I'm not going to have dessert. Dessert is bad. I've already hit my limit. I've already hit my macros, or I've already hit my points, or I had dessert last night, or there's some justification or some reason in your head where you're not going to allow yourself to have dessert. Once I start, I won't be able to stop, whatever it is. So you're like, I'm going to have an apple. I'm going to have a piece of fruit. That'll cut the sweet tooth. That'll satisfy me. I'm just going to have some fruit. Okay. So you have the apple and you're like, well, that fucking sucked. I still want that cake. And then you end up eating the cake, and you probably end up eating even more cake than if you just had the cake potentially to begin with. But either way, the apple in that situation can't do the job you needed to do. You need a food to do the job of satisfying a craving, of satisfying an urge for dessert, which is a perfectly normal human experience. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But an apple's not going to do that job. And you can't put it in that job. And when you put it in that job, it's going to have a domino effect, likely of causing you then to end up eating more of that dessert. And if you don't end up eating more of the dessert, it's going to jack the food noise up, right? So there's going to be a consequence to that, a negative consequence, and what we call in behavior, a maladaptive behavior in some way, because you asked a food to do a job that it cannot do. Not because there's something wrong with that food, right? I don't think anyone would say there's anything wrong with an apple, but we will all say that there's something wrong with chips. There's nothing wrong with chips. Chips are salty and they're crunchy and they taste good. And kettle chips are salt and vinegar kettle chips. That's my favorite, right? But if I'm starving for lunch and I go to grab chips and I eat them and then I keep eating them, there's not something wrong with the chips. There's something wrong with the way that I'm trying to get the job that I'm trying to get those chips to do. So this could be a really transformational skill. One, to start to strip away the I have no control, I have no willpower, I can't have that in the house. That's not really what's happening. Start to strip away some of the morality of that's a bad food. It's not a bad food, but when I eat it, when I try to make it do a job that it's not meant to do, it feels bad for me. And so if you can start to create more of matchup between the job you need done and the food that does that job, things will start to shift very quickly. And this really works in conjunction, right, with that NSS framework. Kind of to the story, the example I talked about with like the apple. If you want dessert, you just need something that's satisfying. You need a dessert to do that, not an apple. And if you want chips, right, they're not going to fill you up. So what is this? They're the satisfying piece. What's the satiating part of that meal? What's the nourishing part of that meal? Right? Or even that snack. Let's say it is a snack, right? What can you have with those chips? Can you have a cheese stick? Can you have some deli meat? Can you have some cottage cheese? Can you have a protein shake? Can you put something with the chips? So you still get the enjoyment. It's not about not having that. It's what can I add to it to fill out that NSS when I'm hungry, right? When I am hungry. When I just want something sweet, it is different. It is different, right? You're not looking for nutrition. You're not looking for satiating. You're looking for something that's just satisfying. And so then you do need something. An apple's not going to be it for 99% of you. So these skills, when we talked about them last night, like the light bulbs going off, I could see it on people's faces. We're on Zoom and 3/4 of people like had their camera on the whole time, which was amazing. And everyone was talking and it was just great. It was so cool. And so I wanted to share this with you guys because these are skills that you can start implementing right now, literally right now at your next meal. You can start implementing this stuff. You don't need like anything fancy. You just need to start asking yourself, what job do I need done? and what food is going to do that job. And if you are hungry, you immediately know that chips, pretzels, crackers, cookies, they are not going to do the job of filling hunger. And if you ask them to, you are going to overeat them and you are going to feel shitty. And then you're going to tell yourself the whole story about why that you can't have these foods around, you're out of control. When I shared that thought process, that outcome, everyone was like, oh my God. They were like finishing my sentences before I could get to them because it was like, holy fucking shit. This is actually what has been going on this whole time. It doesn't mean that it's then always easy to not take the chips. It takes planning, right? There's other work, there's other behavior change skills that go along with this, but this is a foundational one that you can start to notice right away. And you can start to say, oh, okay, I'm not out of control. I'm just trying to use chips for a job that they're not meant to do. And it's like, oh, hold on a second. I'm not defective. There's not something wrong with me. I'm not lacking willpower. It's not that I have no motivation. It's that I haven't been able to sit down and figure out what's something easy I can grab in between meetings that's actually going to fill me up. Maybe I need some support with that. What do I need to do to figure that out? Right? Because you beating yourself up and ripping yourself apart and treating yourself like shit every time that you engage in these behaviors is not changing anything. If anything, it's only digging you deeper because then you follow through on the story of, right, I can't have this around. I'm going to restrict this. I'm not going to put this in the house. When it's not here, it's not a problem. But then as soon as that thing enters your presence, or as soon as you actually really want a dessert, you have no skills in which to have that food in your presence, right? Which starts to get into a little bit of like a separate topic. So this ended up being longer than I thought because I talked a lot, but that's it. That's what I wanted to share. These two fundamental, foundational skills that you are not going to hear or learn anywhere else. This is what I have created over my 5 years of coaching, and this stuff works, right? These skills, every client is like, oh my God, I've never thought about that before. And they say to me, I now stand in my kitchen and I ask myself, like, what job do I need and what food will do that, right? And I use that NSS, and it starts to become like an automated check-in, right? Nourishing, satisfying, satiating. Is this meal going to do that? Or after I've eaten the meal and I'm looking for something I'm missing, what was missing? And you just keep learning and noticing and paying attention. It becomes like an iterative process. All right, that's what I got for you. Thanks for listening. I'll be back next week.